Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Cardosi, and today I'm going to talk to you a bit about bee and bee-related allergies. So here's a brief overview of what I'm going to be covering in this slideshow. First, I'll talk about what you can actually expect when you have an allergic reaction. Second, I'll talk about what causes the allergic reactions, what's behind it. Third, I'll talk about how we can prevent allergic reactions both in the short term and long term. As with any allergic reaction, bee stings and bee product allergies have a variety of reaction severities. So for the bee sting, you have mild and moderate, and you can see in both cases, it's just a local swelling with redness around the sting. And the only difference here is with the mild, this will last maybe a few hours. But with moderate reactions, this can last 5 to 10 days. So there's not much of a difference in terms of the reaction itself, but rather the length of the reaction. For severe reactions, there is a very big difference with how severe the actual reaction is. So you can see in this picture here, massive swelling of this person's hand. And in addition to that, you could experience vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, or even anaphylaxis. For bee products, it's very similar. I don't have any pictures for this, but you can imagine, just like with a bee sting, there's swelling, there's some itching, but with bee products, usually we are eating or drinking these things, so it'll mostly be inside of your nose, mouth, or throat. And similarly, for the severe reaction, you may experience vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, or anaphylaxis. At the root of any allergic reaction is the allergens themselves. For bee stings, the obvious culprit is bee venom. Interestingly, for bee stings, most people have to become sensitized to the venom. So this means that you actually need to be stung many, many times in order to actually become allergic to it. And actually only 5% of the general population is going to experience a severe reaction in their lifetime. But with 32% of beekeepers experiencing severe reactions due to that sensitization, they're more likely to be stung. For honey and other bee products, they are typically contaminated with pollen because it sits inside of the hive. So as the bees move around or just in the air, there's pollen and that gets into the honey. And finally, the one you may not have heard of before is salivary and pharyngeal gland secretions from the bees. So most bee products will contain this in some way, and it contains a different protein than bee venom. So if you're allergic to bee stings, then you may not necessarily be allergic to these gland secretions and vice versa. But there is some hope for those experiencing allergic reactions to these things. So first, and probably one that you're most familiar with, is the concept of allergy shots. And like I mentioned with bee stings, this works with sensitization. So with a bee sting, if you're stung many, many times, you become sensitized to that protein. But allergy shots will actually desensitize it to you by getting your immune system used to having that allergen present. Secondly, you're also familiar with EpiPens, and this can be used during an allergic reaction to soften or delay severe allergic reactions. And note that this is not a permanent solution. This is only in the moment that you can use this. It will not protect you from future instances, obviously. And finally, one that I have not been able to find any research on is filtering. So as I mentioned, honey and bee-related products will usually have some amount of pollen in it. And if that's what you're allergic to, then it makes sense that maybe you could filter the honey such that that pollen is no longer present. But again, there has been no research that I've found on this topic. To conclude, bees and bee products are rife with allergens, but for most people, allergic reactions to them are absolutely minimal. So for most of us, there's nothing to worry about. But for those who do experience severe immune responses to these bee-related allergens, there are both long and short-term solutions. We covered allergy shots and EpiPens, and there may even be more solutions that completely remove these bee-related allergens from bee products entirely. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your semester.